You're listening to a Wheels on the Ground production.
This episode of Disability After Dark has been brought to you by Come As You Are. Come As You Are is Canada's only worker-owned co-op sex shop. Trans-owned and operated, Come As You Are carefully reviews and curates their selection of sex toys, books, and DVDs. Now you can get 15% off your next purchase at comeasyouare.com using coupon code AFTERDARK. This episode of Disability After Dark has been brought to you by clonawilly.com. Clonawilly and Clonapussy are do-it-yourself molding kits that allow anyone to make an exact replica of any penis or vulva into a sex toy at home. All materials are ethically sourced and 100% body safe. If you shop at clonawilly.com right now and use the promo code DARKPOD at checkout, you can get 20% off site-wide. Wow! That's a deal that cannot be cloned. I talked to one of the representatives the other day, and they are more than willing to answer any questions you have about how to make your own Clone-A-Willy or Clone-A-Pussy, how to use the kit. They're so willing to go on this journey of cloning a willy or cloning a pussy with you, and they're super nice and super responsive to any concerns. So if you want to pick up your own Clone-A-Willy or Clone-A-Pussy kit right now, head over to clonawilly.com and use promo code DARKPOD, that's DARKPOD at checkout right now. And remember, this is a deal that cannot be cloned. Content warning. The language, content, and discussion found within this episode of Disability After Dark will be explicit. Listener discretion advised.
This is a podcast that looks at disability stories. It's like sitting down with a really close friend to have a real conversation about disability, sexuality, and everything else about the disability experience that we don't talk about. The things about being disabled, we keep in the dark. Here is your deliciously disabled host, disability awareness consultant, Andrew Gurza.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the show, friends. Thank you so much for clicking on this brand new episode of Disability After Dark, the podcast shining a bright light on disability stories. I am, of course, your host, disability awareness consultant, and your favorite disabled. Oh, I like that. Disabled. I'm your host, disabled Andrew Gurza. Hello, let's get comfy, cozy, and crippled and get this show started, everybody. If you're new to the show and you're listening to the very first time, because I know there are some people out there who are just listening to my dulcet disability tones right now, welcome, hello, nice to meet you. I want you to know that the first 100 or so episodes, 150, possibly more, we focused primarily on sex and disability, but now the show has expanded to shine a bright light on disability stories. The show used to be called Disability After Dark, the podcast shining a bright light on sex, disability, and everything in between, but I decided a while ago now that I wanted to broaden my approach and talk about everything under the sun around disability, because there are so many different stories. People have said to me, why don't you just focus on sex? And I'm like, there's so much more nuance within the disability community, and I want to focus on that a little bit too. So if you are listening, backwards, or however you're listening, and you've stumbled on the older episodes and heard the format change, that's because I made a conscious effort to open the stories up and open the narrative and open the things I was talking about without needing to start a whole new podcast platform. I just wanted to share my thoughts on different things, and I wanted it to be as open-ended as possible, because I found just focusing on sex was really hard to do in a weekly podcast format. Every single week I was scrambling for ideas, and because I've opened it up, I'm allowed to do a lot of cool different things on this platform, and so that's where we are. But if you're a long-time listener, You already know this, and thank you for sticking around. Okay, there's one thing that I have to gripe a little bit about before we get into the show, and this episode today is jam-packed, so buckle in. We're gonna be here together a while for some really great Crypt content, friends. It's gonna be great. But before we get to that, I wanted to say I've been trying for the past couple years to get some transcription service for the podcast. But I downloaded one, and who I will not name because I don't want to shame anybody. But I downloaded one the other day to try again to get transcriptions because everybody's asking me for transcriptions, and I get called out by the community all the time for not being, quote, accessible enough, for not having transcriptions. And so I tried again the other day to get transcriptions for the show because I was like, fuck it. I want to make this accessible. I was recently featured in Forbes magazine, and I was the only podcaster that didn't have transcripts, and I felt like, oh, that feels weird. I was like, I want to fix this. But then I tried to do it with one of those automated transcription services that you pay like monthly for. And so I logged back into my account because I have one. And I remembered that even with the automated transcription thing, with the editing that I have to do and my level of the way that I talk makes it really hard for the transcription service to pick up everything that I'm saying accurately. So it would have taken me hours to edit episodes to do the transcription properly. Now, I'm still down to do transcriptions. I just need to find a way to make that possible for to do it, because I don't have a team of people here. There's not a production team behind me doing this. I'm literally sitting in my house doing this on my own, and I don't have the funds, even with the Patreon. Thank you, Patreon supporters. Even with all of that, I don't have the funds to really pay somebody consistently to do transcribing for me. So I hear you when you say you want transcriptions, but please also think about the accessibility or the inaccessibility of these services that are often there when we look at editing, and the time constraints on one disabled person trying to run a show and run a program, and also be, and do the things I do in my life as a disabled person. So I do want to do it. I'm dedicated to finding a way. It's just taking me longer, way longer than I have wanted it to. That's no excuse. I'm just laying out the reality of my disability and trying to make these transcriptions possible. If anybody has any ideas, do let me know. Okay, just before we dive right in, I want to give a Patreon shout out to one of you lovely folks who keeps a bright light shining on this program and these stories. And for today's shout out, I want to give a shout out to Trina Powers, who pledged $50 for the year, because now with Patreon you can pledge a yearly amount if that works for your budget. So Trina pledged $50 a year, and that's amazing. So Trina Powers, your pledge made me hit the showers because it was so hot. Thank you so much for your pledge. And for your pledge, you get now the episodes one day early on our very, very cool Patreon account. So you get the show one day early, and that sexy shout out that I just gave you. Trina Powers, your pledge made me hit the showers. Thank you so much for your pledge and for shining a bright light on stories like this. If you want to pledge to the show, of course, as per usual, patreon.com/disabilityafterdark. As little as $1 a month, or as much as $5 a month, or more, or a yearly amount if you're able to. And I really appreciate it, so thank you. But now, for real this time, enough of my rambling, on to the show. Lately on the show, I've been really enjoying sitting down and doing interviews with people that I can just talk and share some conversation with, share some disability experiences with, and just have a chat about a whole bunch of different stuff. And that's what I did on this episode today. I sat down with blogger and disabled social worker and my new friend, Kathleen Downs, as we kind of compare and contrast and share our experiences living that CP life, talking about things like the disability benefit system in the U.S. We talk about things like, needing help to go to the bathroom and all of the fun things that are part of needing help to go pee. We talk about intra-community fighting and discussions and disagreements within the disability community. We talk about non-disabled and disabled ways to work together. There's so much that we unpack here. We talk about health policy. We talk about a lot of things, but I loved sitting down with Kathleen. I just re-listened to the episode before doing this intro, and she has such a measured way of thinking. And I was really, when you just talk to somebody and you just vibe with them and you're like, oh, this is one of my people. She was one of my people right away. As soon as we started talking, I was like, I could listen to her speak to me all the time. That's why this episode is so jam-packed and so full of stuff. But we talk about a lot of things here around CP life and all the things that I just mentioned. It was a really, really great chat. She's funny. She's smart. She's articulate. And she has a lot of things to say. And I think it's important that we shine a bright light on her story too and her thoughts on being disabled. And that's what I love about this show, is that we get to shine a bright light on a lot of people's thoughts about disability. And I think that I'm just really proud of that, and I'm proud for you to hear now my interview with Kathleen Downs right here on a brand new episode of Disability After Dark. Kathleen Downs, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy to have you on Disability After Dark. How you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad to be here too. I'm a big fan of your work, and I'm glad that we finally worked out a time to sit down together. Well,
Yeah.
we're always sitting, but you get my point.
So that's very true. Since I got that new scheduler where people can book their own times, it's made my life so much easier because I don't have to do anything. I just look at my calendar and go, oh, I gotta record today. I guess I recorded like that. So it makes it so much easier for me. So we've been trying to do this, as with most of my guests, we've been trying to have you on for a while now. So I'm really glad that you're finally here.
I get it. Scheduling is crazy, especially when you have a disability.
Oh yeah,
You're-
scheduling is a bitch.
I mean, our entire lives are basically scheduling, but that doesn't make it any easier.
No. Right? Yeah. So can you introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So like I said before, my name is Kathleen Downs. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I live in a suburb of New York City. So I live about 12 miles outside of New York City, but with traffic, it can take anywhere between 30 minutes and a couple hours to get there because New York
Wow.
traffic is fun. So
Yeah.
I am a social worker by training. I currently have a part-time job where I design disability-related programming for families of kids with disabilities through a nonprofit that does adapted dance classes. And I also am kind of what you might call a self-made Medicaid expert of sorts. I like to research health policy and the benefit system, partially out of necessity, because it's unfortunately very necessary to understand the weeds of these programs, but also I enjoy helping people figure it out because I think we all know it's really hard to get quality information wherever you are in the world.
Yep.
I know that the benefit scheme is a bit different where you are in Canada, but I think
But not by
anywhere-
much, but not like super, not a lot really. I mean, it's set up differently, but not. It's the idea is the same. The idea is let's keep the disabled people in poverty at the end.
Right.
That's-
So that being said, I don't work as much as I would like to at this time, in part because the benefit system is so complicated. And at least here in America, all home services are linked with Medicaid, unfortunately. And once you pretty much make over a dime, they push you off Medicaid. So it's very complicated to sort of straddle the worlds of trying to do the work you would like to be doing and keeping the health benefits that enable you to do that work.
I think it's so, and I've spoken to other Americans with disabilities on the show about this very system and how fucked it is. And
yes, it's
it makes
extremely fucked.
it makes me really upset that for you to receive quality care, you have to submit to the fact that you can't work, and that's just not right. That's just not. I'm not okay with that.
Right. It's complicated because some states have what you would call a Medicaid buy-in program. So if you're working disabled, you can pay a premium to keep Medicaid and do a certain amount of work. But there's still a ton of rules and it's very bureaucratic. And the unfortunate thing about Medicaid buy-in is that if you lose the job or need to switch jobs or something, you then have to revert back to the rules for regular Medicaid, which are totally, totally different. So you would essentially have to go backwards and get rid of anything extra you may have saved until you are able to find a new job. And for disabled people who are not able to work a full schedule, a lot of employers won't give you private insurance unless you're working a full schedule. And a lot of people, once they reach a certain level of medical complexity, need the private insurance in addition to the Medicaid. So they've created this sort of, no man's land for people who would like to work a little bit more, but maybe can't do the full 40 hours. And then it's like, maybe your needs are too complex for just Medicaid, or maybe it's, too risky to go off regular Medicaid onto Medicaid buy-in right now. So we have a lot of huge policy holes that they make me very sad. It's definitely one of, I think, the most difficult parts of being disabled in the United States. However, on my good days, I try to pour my energy into researching it as much as I can to try to help people understand it as much as possible and hopefully move towards something better in the future. I'm more hopeful.
Well, here's what would be better. Let's just get rid of Medicaid and Medicare and all those systems, and let's do what should be done everywhere, which is healthcare should be free, period, the end. Like, that's it.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm feeling more hopeful for some positive change than I have in the last 4 years, because a
Can't blame you, because Trump is a
a certain someone is finally out of office. But I mean, even with evil Cheeto out of the way, we still have a lot of people that are actively working against the interest of disabled citizens while simultaneously claiming to care about the most vulnerable, quote. So
yeah, I mean, look at the worldwide pandemic we're in. Like, that should tell us enough.
Yes, definitely. It's been a really particularly interesting and sometimes jarring time to be disabled, because people in power are talking out of both sides of their mouths. They're most concerned about the most vulnerable, but then a couple of newspaper pages later, you see people getting their care rationed and people very casually saying things like, well, it's only going to affect the elderly and the sick and the disabled, as if it doesn't matter if we all
Yeah.
die. I
And I
think
mean, can you
that
believe
kind of
that a year? Sorry.
I think that sort of attitude is, popping up across the globe, but I think it's particularly prevalent here in the US because we have sort of this sickly individualistic culture. Um,
Yeah.
in every man for himself is clearly has not worked out great, especially in a pandemic. Um, so that's the sort of stuff I like to do. Otherwise, I have a blog called The Squeaky Wheelchair where I write about disability issues. I write very intermittently, kind of whenever the spirit moves me, so to speak. I don't have a super strict writing schedule like some people do because I'm not one of those people who can write on demand. But it's basically whenever a good idea strikes me. And I like to, wait for something kind of unique to write about. I don't necessarily like jumping on, the latest hot take that already has like, 50 different similar articles.
Are you calling me out? Are you saying that my I'm kidding
No,
because
no, no.
because
I you're actually one of my favorite pages to follow on disability issues because I feel like you're one of the pages out there that doesn't just regurgitate what's already been said a bazillion times. And
oh well, thank you so much. I
I
really
um
appreciate.
I really appreciate your honesty about the good parts and the not so good parts about being disabled because I think, we all kind of face this pressure to be like, happy and proud about disability all the time. And a lot of times disability really is a positive, beautiful experience, but there's a ton of other equally valid things that can be really awful. And I think that the community does itself a disservice when we don't allow people to talk about those things too.
Yeah, and I mean, I have faced. First of all, thank you for loving my page. I never know if it's gonna reach anybody or if anybody really cares, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Also, I feel like I'm often fighting with the community when I'm like, why can't we all just come together? Why can't we all just support each other? And no matter what it is we think, even if it's not the same, can we not like? Why do we have to bash each other? No,
Right.
I don't want
I feel the same way. There's a lot of like intra community
trauma.
bashing
Yeah,
when and I think you're right. I think a lot of that does come from, the trauma of being in a marginalized group. And I think that, the pressure to be positive and disability proud all the time comes from we're afraid if we say anything sad or negative that people will just jump to a hasty conclusion that our whole lives are negative and miserable. And that's not true either. I wish that people could see our lives for what they are, which is nuanced like everybody else's life, but it seems like society is somewhat allergic to nuance. So I think
yeah, I
um
really agree with you there. I really, really agree with that point. I also think, one of the things that I've been tackling in my work is saying to disabled people, like, able-bodied people are not all horrible. They're not out to get, they're not necessarily out to get us. They just need some education. And so, like, for instance, the other day, yesterday, I put on my Instagram that I was like, don't super love it when disabled people call non-disabled people able, and I got so much.
you you know, I actually agree with you on that one. It's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way when people do that because like I get it. we're in a marginalized group, which can be repeatedly traumatic over and over again. And I get it that people need tools to sort of take back their own power, but I don't really think that we're doing ourselves a service by like super generalizing in a way that we don't want others to generalize us.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for saying the thing I've been
Like,
feeling for such a long time.
I feel like we're just kind of like sometimes vomiting back on non-disabled people the things we don't want them to do to us.
Yeah.
And I
But we're doing
think
it to them. We're doing it to them. Like there's no need for it. And the way it's done is like I've seen it. I see it all the time. Like, ooh, I'm being edgy. I'm being cool. It's like, no, you're just being mean. And if someone's trying to like,
and like I get it. Non-disabled people are frustrating sometimes.
yes,
And
100%, I agree with you.
and I also get it that it's not our responsibility or our obligation all the time to educate them. At some level, they need to do their own work. However, I think you've said this before, and I agree with the way you phrased this. It's not an obligation, but it's an opportunity, and we don't have to take the opportunity 24/7.
Yeah, of
but
course not.
but I think that it's I think that it's helpful to them when we do, and I also think it can be healing for me too to take the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Okay, so we're best friends.
Because I think sometimes, like, okay, I don't have to educate someone every day. Sometimes I just don't feel like it and I'm too tired. But other days, I like to think like I might not be able to change the entire world while I'm here. But if I can get like one person to think a little bit differently and then take those ideas out somewhere else, then maybe I've done what I've always wanted to do, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So I was saying, as you were speaking, I was saying, okay, we're best friends. Why can't we be the best? Like, it's just so nice to say.
You'll have to come to New York when the Rona times are calming down, if that
I would
ever
love
happens.
to. I was just there. I was there about a year before the Rona happened, and we went for an award show because apparently I'm famous, and so we went to Manhattan, and it was the most hectic, crazy, ridiculous day of my life, but I loved it so much.
It's not a super accessible city. However, call me some kind of masochist. I love New York City anyway, even though it's like full of accessibility fails.
Oh yeah.
Probably because I grew up here. Like I, there's a part of me that will always love New York City, even though they make it really damn hard for you to get around. Um, and even though it smells like garbage for a good 6 months of the year, it's something a little bit charming about it. I'll be honest, most of my interaction with New York City is to go to doctors. So my acquaintance with the city is usually with a very specific section. But
yeah,
one thing I love about Manhattan and always will is there's just so many different kinds of people that it's like one of those places in the world where people generally don't even blink if they see someone in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And your odds of seeing another person in a wheelchair are very high. And my mother and I have a joke, but it's not really a joke, that we all know each other. So like if we see someone from afar that's also in a power chair, my mom will give me this look and be like, do we know them? And if we don't, why not? And when they come closer, if I don't know them, my mom will be like, should we give them the nod? And I'm like,
oh yeah, the nod.
Oh yeah, we should. Like the nod is totally a thing. It's like even if you're complete strangers, you feel the need to give them this like sort of knowing crip nod, like I
It's like,
see
I
you,
get you.
I
Yeah.
see you, I know your struggle, and also let's be friends.
I feel the same way with other marginalized communities. Like, it's funny, I'll be walking down the street sometimes and I'll see a person of color and they'll see me and we'll do this like, oh yeah, we've been through some stuff. I get you. Like, hey, and you just gotta keep going.
And like I was on the boardwalk a few weeks back and I saw this guy who clearly had some type of physical disability on a hand cycle also on the boardwalk, and I was surprised because he looked about my age and I had never seen him before from a doctor's office or camp or anywhere. So my mom and I were half kidding, half not, like, who is this guy and has he been living under a rock and why don't we know him? And then we just totally gave each other the nod, and my mom was like, I saw you guys exchange the nod. I was like, of course we have to, it's a thing. And then
It's like a
you know
standard crip thing.
there's a part of you that wants to like sneak a picture and send it to all your other wheelie friends and be like, do we know this person? Does he even go here?
Amazing.
Mm,
Amazing. You
I think that's something that's really fun about the disability community, is that a lot of us do know each other from various places or have a ton of mutual friends. That can also be a thing that's not super fun because, sometimes it leads to us all having very preconceived ideas about each other, and or maybe we've all dated each other's friends or know each other's exes, or things like that, when the world is a bit too small. But
yeah.
all in all, I think it's really fun that a lot of us know each other and have gotten to grow up together and be used to seeing other people
Like us.
with disabilities, whether it's the same type of disability or different type of disability. And my best friend and I, we both have CP, and we call other people with CP seeps. And we've decided that there needs to be some kind of in international event where we all get together called the Seeper Bowl, and we
I
can
mean,
all
I'm so there for it. Yes, please. Please.
just uh, sit around and eat the food of our people, which is takeout.
Pretty much. You're not wrong about that. The food of any wheelchair user is takeout, yes.
Because I highly respect, applaud, and venerate other people with CP who have learned how to cook, but I just have not gotten there. And I'm
with my level of spasm and my level of like throwing things on the floor when I get scared, cooking is a dangerous journey for me. I will never be able to do it.
I was gonna say I'm a quad and I have a really bad startle reflex. So by the time I got everything set up to attempt this cooking thing, probably several hours would have passed. And things would be all over the floor. So for right now, I can like kind of sort of cook bagel bites, and maybe that's okay, because the main thing I like to do is eat, not cook. So
we have talked so much. We haven't even really gotten to the first question. You've kind of alluded to it though. You said you have CP, and I kind of knew that from just kind of knowing a little bit about you already. But if you
right, we can give each other the nod through the screen, because we already. It's like, if you know, you know.
You can't see it, but we're giving each other the like, yep, I see you. You got CP nod.
Well, all you have to do is look at my hands, and that's your tip off.
Oh yeah, you 100% have CP hands, 100%. But if you could share with us how your CP impacts your day to day, and Yeah, just tell me more about how CP impacts you.
Sure. So I mentioned I have quad CP, so that means that um it affects all four of my limbs pretty evenly. I would argue that my legs are a bit more affected, because I have some use of my hands, but more or less quad CP is the golden package in that all four of my limbs are very invested in the experience, shall we say. Um, I can use a walker a little bit purely for exercise, and
Oh, jealous.
by exercise I mean like a 300-foot struggle across my living room in like a giant purple walker with arm platforms that looks like a tractor. But
Amazing.
it I'm
Where's the
good.
picture of this? What?
I'm glad that I have the option to do that. It's good to change position every now and again and, get off of my butt. But most of the time I am in a power wheelchair, and I'm pretty dependent on others for most activities of daily living. So I have a personal care assistant. The PCA system here in the US is very stingy, so I have a pretty limited number of hours, even though there's really not much I can do on my own. So when my PCA is not here, either my mom or my dad is here, I live with my parents still, and a big part of the reason for that is the home care system is just so freaking stingy in the US. Like, you can basically fill out a form like, yeah, I can basically do nothing physical on my own, and they'll be like, great, here's 4 hours a day, good luck to you. So
Oh,
um I hope that at some point I may be able to move into a more independent setting, but for right now, you know, I'm at home and I'm okay with that for right now. And that brings me to another tiff I have with the disability community is I think sometimes we're like hard on each other and judgy about, people who still live at home. And it's like it's complicated, man. So
yeah.
um un you know un unless that person is willing to provide 24-hour care and an affordable place to live and an accessible job, I really don't think anyone else has the right to be judging if someone has been able to move out yet. um I think that a sort of less than positive feature of the independent living movement here in the US is I think, we've been deceived into believing that there's sort of one size fits all idea of an independent life. Um,
Yep.
and, a lot of times that archetype is someone who can live totally on their own, work a full schedule, and has either no PCA or very minimal PCA support, where that's just not
The
the
reality for so many
reality
of us.
for so many of us, whether that's for um a lot of times that has to do with policy failure too. It's not that I would be incapable of living elsewhere. It's just that a system is kind of um patchwork. And I think that's one of the scariest parts about having a disability is, the future is just so unclear, no matter how educated you are and how hard you try to plan for it, because you sort of feel like you're always navigating this system that's, just looking for the opportunity to throw you away. So
Yeah.
um it's it's tough, but I'm very fortunate that I have really good parents and I have a really accessible home, and my current PCA is really good. Um, I would like to have more than one PCA, but hiring new people in the midst of the pandemic has been tough, especially
Yeah.
because I don't want anyone in my house that's not vaccinated. But my current PCA is um, most likely moving to a new job soon, so I'm gonna have to start the hunt to fill those shifts, and I'm kind of preemptively exhausted, but I'm sure that you can relate to that or something similar.
Oh
That
yeah. Care is, first of all, as we all know, care is exhausting, care is tiring, and then care
it's
on
a
top of it.
job. It's a
Yeah,
job.
it's a whole job by itself that you're not getting paid for that you have to do. So I
Right.
100%, I 100% get it. Also, I love that you talk about how these systems, these policies that give you 4 hours a day and way less care than you need are designed by humans who are not disabled.
Right. And they very subtly they more or less know that you actually need 24-hour care. They just bank on the fact that somebody will help you unpaid, and they sort of bank on this idea that maybe you always will or always will want to live with your parents, and they don't seem to build in any allowance for the fact that like people's parents are getting older.
Yep.
um and that maybe they won't be able to do what they're doing. And I also really feel like this country exploits unpaid caregivers in that they know that they're going to look out for their loved ones. So instead of investing the money to get more care hours for people who are looking to be more independent, they just say like, okay, well, their mothers will do it for free for the other you know
20
20
hours a
hours of
day.
the day. um and the thing is, I'm very lucky that mine will and she can right now, but that's not something that lasts forever. And also the government shouldn't assume that all these parents and family members are just, willing and able at all times to save them money by performing these caregiving tasks for free. And it's
And also, like, what the government fails to recognize too is that, and I'm sure you know this, I'm sure your mom and dad can attest to this too. There's an emotional toll that comes when you have to work with your family all the time and for basic care stuff. Like, I'm also very privileged and that I get to be in my own apartment with caregivers that are here when I need them. But like when I go on vacation, when I go on like talks or work stuff, I take my mom with me as my caregiver. And after 3 days, as much as we love each other, we're both like, okay, we both of us need a break.
right. It's not a question of loving or not loving your family. You can love your family a whole bunch and still want some independence and space from them. And
Yeah.
I mean, I love my parents to bits, and we're very fortunate that we get along super well. And I think if we weren't related and we were to, you know, meet each other in regular life, we'd probably still like each other and be friends. But that said, um, I think that it's normal for an adult to want some space from their parents, and I don't think the government and even some disability organizations recognize that. It just hasn't occurred to them that maybe we want other options besides living in our parents' homes and being cared for by our aging parents. And I think there's just a real failure to recognize that we have many of the same you know, desires and goals and ideas that other people do. And I think it's important to emphasize here that not everything has to be the same as that of a non-disabled person. I'm of the opinion that there's very unique things about being disabled that I am grateful for and I think have given me a better quality of life. But by the same token, of course, we have overlap with the non-disabled in things that we're looking to do with our lives. And there's just not a lot of recognition of that. Like I once had a quote, quote, special needs planner ask me what I could possibly want more than the amount of my SSI check for. Now, to give you an idea, someone who lives at home, the SSI check is usually about $500 to $600 a month, and I was just kind of flabbergasted that this person who supposedly has a background in disability could act surprised that just because they are disabled, a person wouldn't have a need or a desire to have more than $600 a month.
Yeah, it sounds like when you put it that way, it's so simple. Like the average person living out there in the world today, living especially close to where you live. Can you imagine if you said to the average New Yorker, hey, can you live on $600 a month? Or probably less than that. Try for a week.
And
a month.
I don't know if you've been following at all in the US, the whole stimulus check thing.
Yeah.
When the debates were going on about the stimulus checks, non-disabled people were all up in arms like, oh, $1,400 isn't enough to live on in a month. How do you survive on something like that? But all the disabled people were, over here waving their hands like a Sims computer game character, like, yoo-hoo, hi, hello, that's almost double what we get in a month. So for us, it seems like a holiday. Meanwhile, everybody else is like, this isn't enough to live on. So they acknowledged without acknowledging that we pay disabled people far less than that and expect them to live on it. And I hope that the stimulus check conversation can maybe reopen a larger conversation about how is it that we're still expecting chronically ill and disabled people to live on these tiny little checks. And as we said before, I have privilege in that I have family that will help me and take care of me when I need it. So
but doesn't mean you want it. Doesn't mean you wouldn't want to be like.
So they are able to, buy me extra things that I might need. However, I would still like more financial independence. And there's the very real fact that, there are people out there that literally don't have anyone else who can help them besides that $600 or $700 check. And it's not enough to pay rent, never mind everything else that you might need. But for many disabled people, these SSI checks is what ties them to the Medicaid. So we're kind of stuck in this 1930s kind of thing. Like $1,400 stimulus check doesn't seem like a whole lot to a non-disabled person, but for people who are disabled and have never really had the flexibility to save much money, that sounds like a real lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I have the privilege of doing what I do and being a speaker and working on the podcast and making like a little bit of money that way. But even in Canada, when I make that money, I have to find ways to like strategically hide that money from from the government, because the minute I make $1, that goes away. So I have to play this game where it's like, oh no, I didn't work this month. I only worked a little bit. And here's like the little bit that I can show you. Please don't look at the rest. Like it's really hard.
Right. And it's like, I think these are the same political people too that are, also trying to claim that disabled people are lazy and they don't want to work. And it's like, no, actually, I do want to work. You just make it extremely hard to do so while also maintaining a stable medical situation. Because, if you lose the medical coverage or the benefits that you need, like, okay, Mr. Politician, are you gonna buy me 500 catheters a month? No.
Yeah. No.
So,
Do you even know how to do a catheter? Do you know what that is, politician man? Thank you.
if they do, they probably just squirm uncomfortably and go back to their lives. I think a lot of them probably haven't even lent much thought to the fact that people in wheelchairs also pee, much like they do.
You have given me so many possible titles for this episode. I don't even know. I'm gonna have to like listen back and figure out which one is the best, because they're all so good. But I want to jump.
I can